Picture a camera shutter clicking in deep time. A gust of sand sweeps across a late Cretaceous dune, and at the exact heartbeat when predator and prey lock together, the world presses pause. That pause is real. A fossil from Mongolia showing a Velociraptor and a Protoceratops dying mid-battle roughly 75 million years ago. I'm your guide today, a science communicator who studies how bones become stories, and few stories are as vivid as this one. To appreciate it, we have to walk into the Gobi Desert and into the science of how such a moment could be frozen at all. In 1971, a joint Mongolian-Polish expedition surveyed wine-sculpted Badlands, reading the rock like a diary of vanished days. They brushed away crusted sand and met a tangle of limbs, a curved sickle claw poised near a throat, a parrot-like beak clamped around a forearm. It wasn't staged. The rock recorded struggle knees, tail, ribs, and skulls interlaced as if the animals had simply kept fighting while the dunes slid over them. Sedimentologists later mapped the sandstone, noting cross-bedded layers typical of migrating dunes. One working model goes like this. A velociraptor grabbed a young adult Protoceratops. The ceratopsian twisted to bite back, and in that instant a collapsing slope entombed them both. Another possibility invokes a violent sandstorm or slope failure after rain. Either way, burial was fast, preserving their positions before scavengers or weather could scatter bones. The Gobi of the late Cretaceous wasn't an endless Sahara, but a mosaic of dunes, stream channels, and oases that shifted with season and wind. Life here meant opportunism, quick growth, careful water use, sharp senses. For me, the power of the fossil is not only what it shows, but what it requires of us: care, patience, and the humility to admit what we don't know. On a field trip years ago, a Mongolian ranger named Oyuna told me that the dunes move like living things. She had watched footprints vanish as the wine lifted the surface into a glittering haze. If a step can disappear in minutes, imagine a struggle swallowed in seconds. Our fighting dinosaurs, the nickname stuck, carry that suddenness. Even the small details speak. The Velociraptor on its side, one foot flexed in the raptor grip. The Protoceratops grounded, four limbs splayed, jaw power turned into a desperate hold. Between them is a lesson in ecology, anatomy, and chance. Velociraptor mongoliensis was not the movie monster scaled to human height. It was coyote long and turkey tall, a runner with a stiff balancing tail and hands built more for grasp than slash. Protoceratops andrewsi lacked the giant horns of later relatives, but its skull was still a machine for shearing plant sand, if pressed, for biting back. When we look closely, the fossil becomes a frame in a film we can almost replay, and the Gobi becomes less a wasteland than a library where the pages sometimes fall shut in dramatic fashion. Field teams that day would have paused to sketch, photograph, and stabilize the scene before a single bone moved. Plaster jackets swaddled the intertwined skeletons not to hide the drama, but to carry it home intact. In the lab, preparators teased grains from around teeth and claws under microscopes, like conservators rescuing a mural. Every scratch, every contact point, every grain of sand in a joint told its part of the story. Taphonomy, the science of what happens to bodies after death, became our translator, turning postures and sediments into narrative. Does the raptor's toe claw pierce the neck? Is the beak really locked on the arm, tooth marks pressed into bone, where the rock is blurred? We proceed with caution, because dramatic fossils invite dramatic tales, and science asks for more than spectacle. Think of it as journalism across epochs. We gather multiple lines of evidence, test them against one another, and accept that some facts will remain fuzzy. A predator with grasping feet and a springy tail likely pounced from the side or behind. A stocky plant eater spun with low lung power, digging into the substrate. Both animals did exactly what evolution had prepared them to do, and both lost to geology. Storms and slopes are characters too, moving with the patience of dunes until, suddenly, they act like traps. When Oyuna visits the museum, she stands before the mount in quiet surprise. She grew up near these rocks, yet here they are telling a scene that no human could have watched. The fossil is a gift from erosion, a window knocked open by wind, and a reminder that chance is part of every ecosystem. That, to me, is the heart of paleontology. We read the ordinary as carefully as the extraordinary because both are stitched together. And so this fossil invites us to ask better questions, to build from what the rock truly preserves instead of what we wish it would say. In a way, it makes us better storytellers and better skeptics at once, which is exactly what science needs. That is worth noting. Let's meet the fighters with the care we'd give living animals, because accuracy matters. Velociraptor mongoliensis was about 2 meters from snout to tail tip, lightly built, with a skull of narrow jaws and recurved teeth. Its stiff tail acted like a counterweight, and the famous second toe claw could lift and flex like a switchblade. We have evidence for feathers in Velociraptor relatives and even cool knobs on a Velociraptor forearm, so picture a sleek, bird-like hunter with veined arms, not a scaly horror. Those feathers likely helped with balance during pounces and with display, the same way modern birds flash their wings to change a fight. The claw's job wasn't to get giant prey in one theatrical swipe. More likely it pinned and stabilized victims, while the jaws did work, a wrestling tool as much as a dagger. Protoceratops andrewsi, on the other hand, literally first horned face, was a stocky plant eater with a deep skull, a sharp beak, and a bony frill anchoring jaw muscles. It walked on all fours, had a low center of gravity, and jaws that could shear tough desert plants. This animal probably lived in groups and used its frill and posture for social signals long before big horns evolved in later cousins. In the fossil, the Protoceratops beak grips the raptor's forearm, a move consistent with an herbivore defending itself at close quarters. I picture a whirl of sand, a sidestep and leap from the raptor, a brace from the plant eater, and then the sudden clutch when the slope gives way. Could the raptor have targeted the neck? Possibly. The arc of the foot suggests a strike towards soft tissue. The herbivore's counter is to clamp anything within reach. If you have ever watched a heron's or 2 foxes tussle, feint, grab, reposition, you already understand how much of predation is grappling and leverage. Our fighting dinosaurs freeze that choreography. The scene also corrects popular myths. Movies gave Velociraptor a name larger than its body. The real animal wins on agility and strategy, not size. It cooperated at times, perhaps like modern cars or coyotes, but it didn't need to be a super pack hunter to survive. Likewise, Protoceratops wasn't a helpless victim. 100 kilos of determination at ground level can make short work of an overconfident predator, especially if the sand is loose and footing uncertain. This is where environment returns to the ring. Dunes don't just bury, they dictate tactics. A sprint uphill drains energy fast. A stumble on a slip face turns momentum into hazard. Adaptive bodies meet shifting ground, and the outcome becomes as much about physics as about teeth. Now zoom out. Why does a single fossil matter so much if we have thousands of bones from the Gobi? Because behavior is the hardest thing to fossilize. Tracks offer motion without bodies. Nests offer parenting without action. But a predator and prey entomb together while engaged tells us that, at least sometimes, these creatures met in exactly the sudden, intimate way we imagine. It also invites tests. Are there microfractures on the raptor's arm consistent with a crushing bite? Does the matrix around their rib cages show finer grains that sifted into a pocket as the dune collapsed? Have similar burials turned up in neighboring layers or sites, hinting at repeated slope failures? Each question pushes us beyond cool fossil, into careful measurement, and that is the real engine of science. As techniques improve CT scanning, microscopic WIR analysis, 3D photogrammetry, we can reread old specimens like this one with new eyes. One of my colleagues likes to say that fossils get smarter every decade, not because they change, but because we do. I think of that when I look at the raptor's arms. They were wings in the making, not for flight yet, but for maneuvering, shielding, and display. In a fight at close quarters, spreading feathered arms could make the animal look larger, could redirect sand, could even help it brace as it kicked. Suddenly the elegant, bird-like body plant stops being a curiosity and becomes a fighting style tuned to dunes and scrub. Protoceratops, for its part, shows us growth series from hatchling to adult, suggesting life in groups where young had some protection in numbers. In bone beds, we sometimes find multiple individuals together, which could be the result of herding, drought gatherings, or storms concentrating remains. Either way, it hints that vigilance and proximity were survival tools. Imagine a small herd moving between patches of tough shrubs, adults at the edges, juveniles in the lee of the wind, ears and noses tuned to the scrape of talons on crusted sand. If a raptor darted in, the goal was not heroics, but disruption, force the predator to hesitate, by seconds for the young to dodge behind a dune ripple, and if a chase became unavoidable, a low, sudden swivel to bite an exposed limb could end it fast. In our fossil, that strategy may have worked too late to escape burial, but early enough to leave a bite that still reads as intent. Do we see more sudden death burials near the bases of dunes? Does the orientation of bones track prevailing winds? Every answer tightens the focus on a world that, while alien, is governed by familiar rules of energy, friction, and chance. When we strip away movie noise, what remains is better, animals doing what works moment to moment. Velociraptor's intelligence was the kind honed by practice angles, timing, weight shifts, not mythic cunning. Protoceratops' strength was the kind built from plant fiber and patience, and the gobi's power was steady and indifferent, a maker of scenes that only later become stories. What stays with me after standing before the mount is not the violence, but the clarity. It is the feeling that the Cretaceous is close enough to fog the glass with its breath. And from that closeness come responsibilities. The goby has been a magnet for fossil hunters, both professional and private. And while curiosity is universal, stewardship must be shared. These bones are chapters in a national library. When they leave illegally, the story fractures. Modern expeditions partner with local scientists, train students, and return data and specimens to regional museums, where communities can decide how their deep past is presented. Oyuna now mentors kids who sketch fossils in the galleries. She teaches them to look for patterns, not monsters. A wildlife artist who joined our field team once confessed that he used to paint raptors as naked reptiles. After a week with specimens and papers, he redrew them with contour feathers, mantling wings, and a lean, bird-like poise that made sense of the claw. Are changed because evidence changed, and that is a beautifully ordinary part of science. So, what, precisely, does this fossil teach? First, that behavior need not be guessed only from analogies. Sometimes nature writes a scene directly into stone. Second, that extraordinary specimens are still data points to be weighed, not postcards to be romanticized. Third, that environment is a protagonist. A slip face, a gust, an unlucky angle can decide outcomes, as surely as sharp teeth do. And last, that humility is not a weakness in science, it is a method. We build layered explanations that admit uncertainty, then invite tests strong enough to fail them. When the specimen was first described, the narrative emphasized a sudden dune collapse. Later studies explored alternative triggers and tiny details of posture. Rather than killing the romance, that process made the story sturdier because it connected the scene to measurable grains, angles, and stresses. I wish we were taught more of that kind of romance in school, the romance of accuracy. It turns out that wonder and rigor are not rivals. They are partners that keep each other honest. Follow that partnership forward and you begin to see echoes beyond dinosaurs. In a world of shifting climates and fragile habitats, our lives also intersect with forces larger than intent. We plan, we adapt, and sometimes we are caught mid-stride by events we didn't choose. Natural history gives us language for that. It says, pay attention to place, know the grain of your dune, the direction of your wind, the limits of your sprint. That advice is as practical for field teams as it is for communities planning water and land use today. Now, picture the last seconds of our animals once more, but listen closely. The raptor exhales, chest tight under ribs that once bounced with a runner's cadence. The plant eater plants its forelimbs and braces, the beak creaking as bite meets bone. The slope shifts. Grains cascade with a hiss like rain on leaves. Balance vanishes. 100 million moments of ordinary desert physics assemble into a trap elegant enough to stop two lives at once. What remains is not defeat, but evidence, a handshake between motion and geology. I find that deeply human. We are meaning makers, and the rock gives us material worthy of careful meaning. As I leave the gallery, I think of the tools that made the scene legible: field notebooks, jackets, microscopes, microscales of quartz. None of them are glamorous. All of them are invitations to look closer. Before the doors close, Oyuna points at the intertwined skeletons and smiles. She says the wind wrote a story that day. Maybe that is the simplest truth. The wind wrote, the dune bound, erosion edited, and scientists learned to read. And now you have read it too, in a sense, because telling is a form of seeing. If this story moved you, let it move you toward patience with evidence, toward questions, toward museums, toward the practice of careful wonder. Our world is full of living lineages that survived where these two did not. They also meet shifting ground, changing water, and unexpected collisions with chance. Support the places that study and protect them. Carry with you the mental picture of a raptor's lifted toe, a beak that won't let go, and a dune deciding the ending. It is a picture of nature as it is, vivid, unscripted, and, every so often, pause long enough for us to learn. There is one more gift here, a reminder that tools are extensions of attention. CT scans can see through jackets without lifting a bone. Micro-CT can map the curve of a tooth or facet. Thin sections can reveal seasonal growth in bone. Photogrammetry turns the mount into a shareable 3D model, so students oceans away can examine posture and angles. Even the sand speaks when we sieve it. Grain-size distributions whisper about wind strength and distance traveled. Every technique costs time, and time is what respect looks like in science. Respect for the animals, for the land that kept their secret, and for the people who live with that land now. When I say that, I'm thinking of the bus rattling back from the field, bruised water jugs still sloshing, and the way silence settles after sunset as if the dunes themselves are listening. In that quiet, the fighting dinosaurs feel less like a spectacle and more like a teacher. They teach patience, scale, and context again.